Hey guys, so today I'm changing out my dryer vent, and it is really something that's really past due to do, and it's a task that's really important because a lot of times people don't realize your dryer vent can become detached from the back of your dryer. Your house can fill up with a lot of humidity if you have it inside of a finished area. Mine is luckily in the basement, but it still adds a lot of humidity if that pops off, and it has happened several times over the last few years. But I'm going to show you a new type of dryer vent that uses magnets to make sure that it doesn't pop free, and a few tips along the way that'll make sure that it gets the exhaust from your dryer, all the lint and everything, to the outside safely. You don't want a dryer vent fire, which occasionally does happen if you have lint buildup. So this is a thing that you need to inspect your dryer vent and vacuum it out at least once a year, especially if you do a lot of laundry, if you have a larger size family. So it's really important that you do this. But using this particular dryer vent will make it so much easier to clean, and it will assure you a much safer connection. Let me get started and show you exactly how to put this together. It's really simple to do, and it's not all that expensive when you compare it to the possibility of a house fire and the cost of running hot air back into your finished area. Now in my particular case, I've got some issues here. Normally you would mount the mounting bracket, and I'll show you that right there, that comes with the magnetic kit. Normally you could just mount it to the wall, but unfortunately I may have to put maybe a piece of plywood or something to bring it out a little bit, because it is a little bit tight in there and I'm not sure how easy it would be. Don't think it would fit like that, so we need to bring your bracket out. So if you have some setup like this where you have a lot of pipes and things on your wall, you want to make sure that it's out a little bit so you can hook up the magnetic component. So I measured exactly where the dryer is from the side of the wall to where the exhaust from my dryer comes out. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of cutting on this right here, and it's going to, maybe I'll even replace this. I'm debating on it because I bought some extra parts and pieces. This is okay, but you can see that these ribbed exhaust vents do kind of collect, and I guess it doesn't matter really what kind you have, but they do collect a little bit of the dryer lint there, if you can see that. So it does happen. So that's why it's so important to vacuum these out at least once a year and make sure there's not a buildup, because there has been many times where a dryer fire actually happened from the lint spontaneously combusting from the heat from the dryer. So I've redid this entire area for my wife, and this little area down here is really out of view, so it didn't really matter too much, but I'm going to have to do a little bit of work to get this mounting bracket in just the right position. Now I want to show you a little bit more about this particular system, and this is the mounting bracket, and so it fits into these little grooves right here on both sides of this. And there's a very strong magnet in here, and then on the other piece there is another magnet that attaches to your dryer. I'm going to show you how strong this is. The pull of them will keep it totally sealed, and so when it's time to clean them, you just slide the dryer away. It's opened up. You can take your hose for your shop vac or whatever you have and just put it in there and vacuum it out. You can also take your cell phone and put it in at an angle and take a photograph down in there with the flash on, and you can get an idea of how badly it is filled with lint. So it's always a good idea to do an inspection, a visual inspection. If you can't see further back in there, take your cell phone and take a photo with the flash on. That'll make a huge difference. Now this kit does come with some drywall anchors, so you can use these, but unfortunately I've got to get around the pipes that are along that wall, so I'm going to have to install a 2x4 to bring it out so the mounting bracket is not sitting flush with the pipes, and I'll be able to get this back onto the front of it. So just remember, if you do need to do that, you can use something like a 2x4 to bring it out, but if you want to apply it directly, I'll try to get you so you can see them. This comes with a kit, and it makes it a whole lot easier to put it directly into drywall. You just hammer these in just a bit and take a screwdriver and screw them down, and then you can put your mounting screws through the back of your bracket. So just remember that in my case it's a little bit different, a little bit more problematic for just using drywall screws. So I'm just going to use some standard screws to go in there so I can mount that 2x4 first. So down here at floor level, we want to do some careful inspections. We have a drainage pipe here, and we want to make sure that it doesn't come in this direction. We can also use things like stud finders to check and see exactly where the stud is there. Various types, I'll put links in the description, but we can just carefully put it around that area and find exactly where our stud is. So if you're wanting to make sure that you go into, instead of just drywall, you want to make sure that you go into a stud if you're using screws like I am. But if you're just going into drywall, the magnetic bay, or the base for the magnet part, should be fine, and if you use those anchors that came with the kit. So just make sure that you do a good inspection and make sure there's no electrical cords or any plumbing pipes directly behind the area where you're going to mount and go into the wall, because you could damage them. I'm going to use some of these wood screws I just happen to have handy, and what I wanted to give you a quick tip on storing wood screws. The boxes they come in often disintegrate. They're just made out of cardboard, very thin cardboard. So I like to reuse these ice cream containers that are clear and I can see through. If you have some type of container that's frosted, you can take some hot glue and glue one of whatever you have stored in there and hot glue it to the top of the container like this. And so you'll know exactly what's in there if your container is not transparent like this one is. So let me get started by putting the screws in here. We're going to mount our 2x4 right where we need it so we can further mount the backing of the magnetic plate. Okay, so I've mounted this 2x4. It went into a stud securely to the wall. What I'm going to do now is take a marker and mark every little spot. I'm going to use much smaller screws to mount this. We just want to make sure that we mount it in just the right spot. So I'll take a marker and go through each small hole and make sure that we're going to put the screws in just the right place. All right, and the reason I'm doing this, I just want to make sure that I don't go into any screws. I'm not too close to the edge. So it's a little bit hard to see from the angle I'm looking at. So I'm just going to mark each hole that we're putting it in and just make sure they all line up, and I'm not trying to go into a screw, or they're not trying to get too close to the edge. A little bit difficult there from that angle. I'm really at a tight angle. So as you can see, there's where our screws are going to go. I'm going to use some really small ones, and these are going to be some wood screws that should keep it in place with no problem. But our 2x4 is mounted quite well into another stud behind the wall, and so this should be no problem with keeping the magnetic thing from popping off. Sometimes when you go into sheetrock, you could have an issue, so make sure that you go into a stud behind the wall to make sure that it doesn't pop off at a later date. And we're going to line up our mounting bracket here. I don't see, we're a little close to this screw here, but we're okay. I think it should be just fine. And so I'm just going to match that up with a mark I made earlier and put a shorter sized wood screw in there. Okay, and we're going to line that up to make sure we're at just the right angle. There we go. Everybody's lined up there, so I'm going to put the rest of the wood screws in. Now I'm guessing those were about 1-inch wood screws. I just want to make sure this doesn't come off easily. We want it to, as we're moving the dryer over the months and years, each time we inspect it, we want this staying on the wall. So it just makes it a lot easier if it's really well mounted. So just make sure that you're using some quality mounting hardware, because if you use something really small, it could easily come out from your sheetrock if you're mounting directly on sheetrock. And make sure the screws you're using are quality wood screws that will stay embedded in whatever type of wood you have it there. All right, so here's the 90-degree piece that has the magnet around the face of it. I'm going to try to get this mounted on there. It's very difficult because of the angle I'm at, so I'm going to try to do this from the top first. Just slip it into there. Same thing on the bottom. You have to kind of reach your hand around there, and so we've got it mounted very securely. Pulling the dryer in and out, it's not going to come off the wall. The magnet is strong, but it's not so strong that you can't separate it pretty easy. And I'll show you that in a little bit. But now we need to worry about mounting our exhaust vent. And personally, I would prefer an exhaust vent that doesn't have these ribs on it. But I've got some extra pieces. If I decided to change this out later, that might be another video for another day. But I just want to make sure that I mount this properly up against this. And I wanted to use some very special tape that can tolerate high heats, and I don't have to worry about it separating at a future date. Now I'll put you over my shoulder there so you can get kind of a better view of the setup. This is a little bit too long, our exhaust vent, so I'm going to take a hacksaw and cut it to about 2 inches past, so I'll make sure I have a good mounting surface so I can put it on there reliably. But we're just going to take a hacksaw and cut very slowly and methodically so we can have a good fit. If you do decide to use this type of ventilation thing, like I said, it has a lot of ribs on it and there's a lot of texture to it, and I think it tends to catch more. But I think the better type is the smooth type. I'll show you that in just a second. But this one is what I have on there currently. But if you want to upgrade to one that's going to catch less lint as it exits your dryer, I'll show you that real quick. Now this is what I'm referring to, this type of duct work, and there's still a little bit of a lip in there, so we might still catch a lot of lint on that, but I think it will catch less lint. So I'll put a link in the description. If you want to upgrade your exhaust hose to something like this, I think you will be cleaning out probably less, maybe once every 2 years rather than once a year. But I don't mind going in there and just vacuum it out to make sure there's not a buildup in there. So just remember, if you want to upgrade, you can do this right here, and it will definitely exit your dryer area a little bit easier. So just depending on how much work you want to put into your dryer exhaust. So personally, I think one of the best things to cut this type of ribbed exhaust vent is a very fine tooth hacksaw. I think it works much better. But at the end there, I had to take a pair of electrician's snips and cut off that little last piece. So let me just show you how easily this slides on there. That's why I added extra, to make sure that it's going to fit all the way. So you can see it's a really good fit, and this has kind of an accordion-like thing going on there, so you can stretch it as you need it. But just make sure you don't cut it too short, because then you're going to have a problem. You'll have to replace the whole thing if you can't stretch it out far enough. So just make sure you do that. So as you can see, that's a perfect fit. And now I'm going to show you that very special tape that will keep this sealed in place, and it can tolerate high heat. Now this is what some people call furnace tape, and it's a metallic type tape with a wax paper on it, and it is super sticky. So we're going to peel off some off the back, and I'm going to work my way around to the back of this to try to get it down as far as possible. And like I said, it is super sticky, so it doesn't take much to get it stuck in the wrong place. So just work your way around to the back there. Seal it about 50% onto your exhaust pipe, and then 50% onto your magnetic device here. And we're just going to keep pulling as we go around. Kind of guesstimate exactly how far this needs to go back around there. Tear it. It's easy to tear. It's not hard at all. You don't need to cut it with any type of special cutters. And I'm just going to pull it back off there and try to not get it stuck to itself or anywhere I don't want to get it stuck to, which is not easy, because like I said, it is super sticky. You have to kind of work with it because I'm in kind of a tight spot, but there we go. Now once we get it all the way around, I'm going to loop it back on top of it there, and then you want to just press down and make sure it's making contact with everywhere, so none of the hot air can escape, none of the lint can blow out. And so as you can see, we have a very tight fit there, and this will stay on there for years and years. This tape, I've seen it decades later, is still very sticky and stuck to it when I was working on another project. So there you have that part of it, and I'm going to show you the next part we put onto the dryer, which makes it so much easier to do dryer vent maintenance. Now this is the exhaust coming out of the back of the dryer, and so we want to make sure that we put a lot of this on there. So I'm going to stretch it out. Now this is the back. This is the other piece of the magnet here. This is another very powerful magnet, and they'll stick together no problem. So we're going to put that over that and kind of just carefully work it around. But what we want to do is we want to clamp it and tape it, both. So I'm going to just thin this out just a little bit. I'm hoping I'm on camera there. And I want to make sure that it fits over this quite well, because I don't want it coming off at a later date. So I'm just going to kind of work around, kind of spin it like that. Pull it as tight as it'll go. And like I said, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to tape, and I'm going to use this right here. These are so much easier than using the type that you have to find a screwdriver. You just basically do it with your hands. You can snap that right there, and then put it around the base of it, and then you can tighten it back down. It's a little tricky from the angle I'm in, so I'm going to have to do it from over here where I can actually see what I'm doing. All right, and let's start to tighten it back down where it catches on the teeth. Starts tightening back up, and I'm going to put it like that so it makes it a lot easier to tighten it down. And before I do that, I'm actually going to put a little bit more of that tape on there, because I want to make sure that we have a very good seal, and we don't have to worry about heat with this tape or melting, because it will take quite a bit of heat. So it's going to be a little tricky. Sometimes this tape is a little bit hard to get unstuck, so you have to be patient with it. And we're just going to not peel the whole thing off. We're just going to start just at the end and put it right up against the dryer, and then slowly peel it as we go. That way we have two different things helping it stick there. One is going to be this clamp hose type clamp, and then we're going to also replace this one. This is also the old type. I'm going to replace that with a type where you can just tighten it up like that. It's a lot easier than having to find a screwdriver every time. So we need to make sure we slip this over the collar of the dryer, make sure that it's snug up against this as well, and then we want to tighten it down. I'm hoping you can see that there. So much easier than doing it with a screwdriver, because if you're using a screwdriver you have to kind of finagle your way in there, and sometimes the screwdriver hits everything. So this way I can just tighten it by hand till I have a very tight fit. Don't break it. You know, this is plastic. These little blue things are plastic, so you just want to kind of slowly turn it until we feel a lot of resistance. I'm barely able to turn it with my fingers, and so now this is really tight, but we want to make sure that we have it all the way around there. We haven't missed anything, so just keep giving it a turn until you can't turn it anymore. There we go. So that's hooked up to our dryer. We don't have to worry about it just popping off as is done so many times the other way. So many times I'll look behind the dryer and wonder where that heat's coming from, and so this is popped off by itself. So these actually are better than using the type that you have to use the screwdriver, because sometimes you can't get them tight enough. Now I'm going to replace this one right here on the second piece, since I've got 4 of these, but I'm only going to use 2 today, and that will make it a lot easier. And as you can see, the magnet, watch this, there's a very strong magnet on both sides, so it really keeps it stuck on there well. So let me just take this second one off, and I'll put in another clamp that can be put on and taken off by hand. All right, so let me remove this old type pipe clamp. Just unscrew that there. And that was the one that came with the kit, but I feel like they might be able to upgrade their kit by having the type with the blue in there, but that's up to them. But like I said, I'll put a link in the description. I think it's a really good idea because it really saves you a lot of time, and you don't have to worry about it coming off at some point just from moving the dryer maybe just a little bit. So let's tighten that back down. I'm going to put it right back where the other one was at, right up against the magnet, and just tighten it by hand. And of course, just be patient because it takes a little while for the teeth to catch. Once they do, it does it very quickly. And just make sure that you keep tightening it. You don't want to compress the exhaust there, but because we're not quite on a firm piece of metal like we were there. So just slowly do that until you feel a good bit of resistance, and then we'll go to the next step of showing you how easy this is to hook up. Now I'm going to probably do a little bit of vacuuming on the other part, but I want to demonstrate quickly how easy this does. See, now we can pull it, angle it any way we want to angle it, depending on where it's at, so we don't have to have an exact match. So that is the one good thing. Even though I'm not really crazy about this rib type of exhaust, it's a little bit easier to deal with in some of the rigid products where you have to have an exact match from the wall to your dryer. You can buy pieces that will adjust at an angle, but this is like super simple. You just basically just kind of line it up and the magnets will pull them together. All right, so I'm going to show you how quickly this clamps together like that. So I'm just going to get it close, and it's permanently sealed until you pull the dryer just a little bit and it'll release. So it's a great way to be able to clean out your dryer lint and not have to worry about your dryer becoming suddenly detached from the exhaust pipe. So it just goes apart. I'm going to take it apart real quick, show you how easy it is. And the magnet pulls it tight. It's a perfect fit, and we don't have to worry about losing any lint. It goes right outside where it belongs. Now, as I mentioned, these are a little bit better because they have a little bit smoother interior and less likely to catch quite so much lint. So if you want to upgrade to these, you can make all kind of different angles with this type of fitting pipe. And then also you have the long piece, as I mentioned earlier. So I'll put links in the description to those. Also the pipe clamps themselves, the tape, the furnace tape. And so it's just one of those things that can really make your life easier if you don't have to struggle with getting to your dryer lint. Just pull your dryer out. Now there is a device I'm planning on upgrading my dryer to, and it's a locking wheel system that makes it easy to pull the dryer in and out. So I haven't ordered that yet, but I'll put a link in the description, and I'll let you know on Patreon how much I liked it, whether I did or whether I kept it or sent it back. So being able to pull the dryer in and out should make it a heck of a lot easier, as well as the washer whenever I need to do any kind of maintenance behind there. So guys, if I didn't mention it before, the name of this product is called MagVent, and it's obvious why they named it that, and it works great. And there's two different types. There's one that goes straight in, and then there's one that does this 90-degree angle. So depending on what type of dryer hookup, I'll put links in the description to everything I've used in both types. I think it really makes it a lot safer for your dryer as well, because you don't have to worry about the dryer vent coming loose or slightly loose, and then it catches a lot of lint, and there's always a chance of a dryer fire. So guys, if you're interested in this type of content, or if you want to see content that may not be on YouTube, I might only put a lot of future videos on Patreon. You can sign up there. If you have any questions or comment about this video, you can leave a comment. I would prefer that it come from people who have already subscribed, because I put those people to the front of the list. I get anywhere from 100 to 300 comments a day, so it's really difficult to answer anybody, and I always give priority to anybody who's subscribed to the channel. So guys, I really appreciate you watching, and have a great day.